A new journey begins. Emma Wilson stood outside the grand double doors of the sprawling Maplewood Inn, her heart fluttering with a mix of excitement and nervousness. The inn was a legendary landmark in her small town, known for its charm and timeless elegance. With its ivy-covered brick walls, antique lanterns, and cobblestone driveway where polished cars waited to be parked by attentive valets, it exuded an air of prestige. Emma, only 10 years old, had always marveled at the inn from afar, imagining what it might feel like to step inside its enchanting halls. Today, her imagination would meet reality. Dressed in her favorite yellow dress, with a white ribbon tied in her hair, Emma clutched a small leather notebook close to her chest. She had been sent by her father, Robert Wilson, the new owner of the Maplewood Inn, to see how the inn operated and to learn what made it so special. Robert had recently acquired the inn through a quiet but significant business deal, yet he wanted Emma to explore it on her own anonymously. It was a lesson he often imparted, understanding the value of hard work and people's stories, regardless of status. Emma pushed the heavy doors open and stepped into the lobby. The scent of polished wood and fresh flowers greeted her, and the sight of the chandelier sparkling overhead took her breath away. A grand staircase curved elegantly to the upper floors, and the soft hum of activity filled the space. But Emma's awe was interrupted when a tall man at the front desk, whose name tag read Mr. Harris, glanced down at her. "Can I help you?" Mr. Harris asked, his tone clipped, as though speaking to a child was beneath his station. His dark suit was impeccably tailored, and he exuded a commanding presence. Emma hesitated. "Good afternoon," she began, mustering her politeness. "I'm here to learn about the inn and maybe help out. Is there someone I could speak to about how things work?" Mr. Harris frowned slightly. "Help out? We don't let children loiter here. This is a place of high standards, young lady. Perhaps you should return home and find more suitable activities." Emma's cheeks flushed red, but she held her ground. "I can help. I'm very good at organizing things, and I can learn fast." Mr. Harris's frown deepened, and he crossed his arms. "This isn't a playground. We don't allow just anyone to roam the inn. Please leave." Emma's heart sank. She had never been spoken to like this before, and the sting of the man's dismissiveness was sharp. She wanted to argue, to tell him exactly why she was here, but her father's words echoed in her mind. "You'll learn more if you observe than if you demand." Instead of replying, Emma turned and walked back out the doors, the sting of embarrassment burning in her chest. When she reached the sidewalk, her small notebook felt heavier in her hands. Opening it, she wrote her first observation. "Not everyone is kind to people that they don't know." Just as she finished, her phone buzzed. It was a message from her father. "How's your first visit?" Emma hesitated, then typed back, "Interesting. I'll tell you more when I get home." Later that evening, Emma sat by the window in her room, looking out at the Maplewood Inn in the distance. The lights from its windows glowed warmly, but the memory of Mr. Harris's cold demeanor lingered. She flipped through her notebook, thinking about what she had seen and heard. The thought of going back made her nervous, but she knew she couldn't give up so easily. The next morning, Emma convinced her father to drop her off near the inn once more. This time, she decided to approach the staff differently. She entered through the side door, where she had seen housekeepers and other workers come and go the day before. The hallway smelled faintly of laundry detergent, and Emma followed the sound of humming until she found a woman folding towels in a small, bright room. "Hello," Emma said softly, stepping inside. The woman looked up, startled. She had kind eyes and wore a simple uniform with a name tag that read, Mrs. Rivera. "Hello, sweetheart. Are you lost?" Emma shook her head. "No, I'm here to learn about how the inn works. Can I help you?" Mrs. Rivera smiled warmly, a contrast to Mr. Harris's frosty reception. "Well, aren't you a curious one? Sure, you can help me fold these towels, but don't go telling anyone. I'm not sure the managers would like it." Emma grinned and set her notebook down to help. As they worked, she asked Mrs. Rivera questions about her job, the guests, and the other staff. Mrs. Rivera shared stories about long shifts, demanding visitors, and the small joys of making a room feel like home for travelers. Emma listened intently, scribbling notes whenever she could. Over the next week, Emma spent time with various members of the staff. She helped the bellhop carry bags, shadowed the kitchen team as they prepared meals, and even joined the groundskeepers as they tended the gardens. Everyone was kind to her, though many seemed surprised by her curiosity and determination. But Emma couldn't help but notice patterns. Staff whispered about Mr. Harris's rigid rules and how he treated certain employees unfairly. Some guests were catered to with extra care, while others were barely acknowledged. Emma wrote everything down, her notebook filling with observations about the inequality she saw. One afternoon, as Emma walked through the lobby, she spotted Mr. Harris speaking sternly to a housekeeper about a minor oversight. The housekeeper's shoulders sagged under his sharp words, and Emma felt a surge of frustration. She didn't want to reveal who she was yet, but she also couldn't stand by and watch someone be treated poorly. "Excuse me, Mr. Harris," Emma said, stepping forward. Mr. Harris turned, clearly annoyed. "Yes?" Emma stood tall despite the nervous flutter in her chest. "I think it's important to treat people kindly, especially when they're working hard. Don't you agree?" Mr. Harris's expression shifted to one of surprise, then disdain. "I beg your pardon?" Emma held his gaze. "You heard me." For a moment, the lobby fell silent. Then Mr. Harris straightened his tie and said, "This is no place for a child's lecture. Perhaps you should return to your parents." Emma's cheeks burned, but she didn't argue. Instead, she turned and walked away, her head held high. She had said her piece, and that was enough for now. That evening, Emma sat down with her father to share everything she had observed. Robert listened carefully, his brow furrowed as she described the disparities in how staff and guests were treated. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair, deep in thought. "You've done well, Emma," he said finally. "Now what do you think we should do about it?" Emma hesitated, then said, "I think we need to make changes from the inside out. But I want to help. I've spent time with the staff, and I think they'll trust me." Robert smiled. "Then let's make it happen." The next day, Emma returned to the inn with a new purpose. Her father had given her permission to introduce herself properly to the staff and explain her role. She gathered everyone in the dining hall and stood before them, her small frame dwarfed by the grand room. "Hello, everyone," Emma began, her voice steady. "My name is Emma Wilson, and my father is the new owner of the Maplewood Inn. Over the past week, I've had the chance to work with many of you and see how hard you work to make this place special. But I've also noticed some things that need to change." The room was silent as Emma continued. "I believe that everyone here deserves respect, no matter their job or background. Together, I think we can make this inn not just beautiful but fair and welcoming to everyone. Will you help me?" For a moment, no one spoke. Then Mrs. Rivera stepped forward, smiling. "We're with you, Emma." One by one, the staff nodded in agreement. Even Mr. Harris, standing at the back of the room with his arms crossed, seemed to soften slightly. Emma felt a wave of relief and gratitude. This was just the beginning, but she knew they could make a difference together.